This is Professor Marin van Putten, who received a whopping €2 million grant by the European Research Council to linguistically take apart the Quran and figure out whether it lives up to its extraordinary claims as a perfectly preserved book originating in the middle of the 7th century. Before we get to what his analysis revealed, it's worth quickly going over the standard Muslim timeline. This gives us a frame of reference to compare the professor's scholarship against. In 610 CE, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ receives his first revelation. In 632 CE, the Prophet ﷺ passes away and all revelation ceases. By now, the Quran has been entirely memorized and inscribed on various perishable material. In 632 CE, from various written material and men's hearts, Caliph Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu gathers the Quran into a single book, Mushaf. Note, the Prophet died this very same year. On the 25th year of the Hijrah, 647 CE, Uthman radiallahu anhu standardizes the Quran back to Qurayshi dialect throughout the Muslim lands. The period between the Prophet ﷺ death and standardization of Quran is about 15 years. Now, bear this in mind. This is the crux. According to the Muslim sources, the Quran was standardized by about 647 CE by the third Caliph, Uthman radiallahu anhu. And it is this claim that's being tested today. Now, one last important thing before we get to the professor's remarkable findings. What does standardization actually mean? Well, from the time of the Prophet ﷺ to the third Caliph, Uthman radiallahu anhu, a 15-year period, the Quran could be recited in 7 Arabic dialects called ahruf. Now, this doesn't mean 7 different Qurans. It means the 7 readings of the Quran are the same, but there are minute dialectical differences in how certain words are pronounced and spelt. This flexibility existed to assist the non-Quraysh Arabs with their recitation. What's important to remember is these 7 readings are mentioned in authentic ahadith, and so they're a part of the canonical readings of the Quran. They're not corruptions, and they certainly don't impact the theology. So the standardization process was basically Caliph Uthman radiallahu anhu restoring the Quranic recitation back to the main Qurayshi dialect, always the most popular one that the Quran was originally revealed in. Why? Because by about 647 CE, the different Arabic dialects were starting to confuse the new Muslims joining the growing caliphate. Now to our academic, a leader in the field of historical linguistics, who specializes in the linguistic history of Arabic, Berber and Semitic. Marin van Putten, PhD 2013 of Leiden University, who focuses his research on the textual history of the Quran and the early history of the Quranic reading traditions. For your information, he's not a Muslim, and his only motivation is to subject the earliest Quran manuscripts to the historical critical method. So, the €2 million question. Has the Quran been faithfully preserved? Because that's the bold claim Islam makes, right? Quote, verily, it is we who have sent down the dhikr, and surely we will guard it from corruption.
For this, but if you look at the text, really look at the text and look at the early manuscripts, not many people are looking at them. The first thing that'll strike you is that how similar they are. They are extremely similar. I mean, it's really a totally different story than with the New Testament, but even, with like early Hebrew Bible stuff, it's much more chaotic.
You can sense the surprise in the professor's voice, can't you? In terms of what he's encountered with these manuscripts. It was clearly a surprise. By way of comparison, he mentions the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament, but it's clear the Quran is in a league of its own.
And then you look at the Quran, and it's the same thing over and over again. It's not just the same thing, like in general lines. No, it's down, not just down to the words, it's down to the spellings, right? Even the specific spellings. And sometimes really random spellings are copied faithfully over and over again. Sometimes a word can be spelled in 2 ways, but they'll always write in one place in one way, and the other place in another way, and you don't get any mixing in that early manuscript. So really, scribes took the utmost care to really carefully copy these manuscripts.
The professor is so taken aback by the level of meticulous attention to the process of preservation he observed in these early manuscripts. He grudgingly juggles the idea of the early Muslims doing something extraordinarily anachronistic, like a postmodern interfaith textual critique, something unheard of until the post-Enlightenment landscape of modern academia.
You know, it's like, well, is that because of an example of the text? I don't know. That is putting a lot of faith in knowledge of textual problems in the person whoever composed the Quran, which they may have, you know, but how aware were people of these issues?
Now, obviously, being an academic, working within the framework of the historical method, he can't attribute this perfect preservation to a god, no matter the extraordinary things he stumbles upon exploring the Quran. He has to confine his answer to an academic one. That's what he gets paid millions for. Theology just doesn't figure.